Sweet, fresh meat.
Usually on this show, we like to take a look at the films that have never quite entered production. But this time around, we're taking a look at a film that was altered in so many different ways that by the time it came out, it was but a shell of its original idea. Today on What the F Happened to This Unmade Horror Movie, we're taking a look at a version we never got of Scream 3.
What's your favorite scary movie?
When Scream came out in 1996, it completely took the horror world by storm. Directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson, the horror genre would be forever changed due to the meta-influence of this one film. They would team up again on Scream 2, which served as a meta look at sequels that also managed to light the box office on fire. All signs pointed to a third film. However, due to Williamson's other successes with I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, and the TV show Dawson's Creek, he was unavailable to return for writing duties. However, he had provided notes for what Scream 3 could be, and boy is it interesting. When Williamson first sold the script for Scream back in 1995, he wanted to sweeten the deal for interested studios. So he also included a 5-page outline for 2 sequels. While Williamson was able to execute much of what he planned for Scream 2, he still had to make a change in Killer after an early script leak. Scream 3, on the other hand, had a much messier journey to screen. I want to thank you guys for watching What the F Happened to This Unmade Horror Movie, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. Williamson expanded his original outline into a 20 to 30 page detailed outline that had the film taking place in Woodsboro, where a third Stabbed movie was being filmed. People would then start getting murdered in an effort to lure Sidney out of hiding. So while the change in locations was pretty major, the general idea of the outline remained in the final movie. One element that did not was the killer. In the film that was actually released, the killer is revealed to be Roman Bridger, the long-lost half-brother of Sidney Prescott. He had tormented Sidney as revenge against Maureen, who had turned him away and rejected him. It's very convoluted and is often heralded as the weakest killer reveal of the series. And it's hard to argue. Funnily enough, Williamson had a familiar face as the mastermind behind all of Sidney's misfortunes: Stu Macher. See, Stu had survived the television electrocution from the first film and was in prison all of this time. He had been masterminding all of Sidney's misfortunes.
It's always been me, the author of all your pain.
Some of this may sound familiar for what happened in the final film. Matthew Lillard had been hired to return, even being paid for the gig. However, once a new writer was brought in, the Stu character was left firmly in the past. While Craven wanted Williamson to return, Kevin just didn't have the time, and Bob Weinstein was unwilling to wait for him to become available. Lead Neve Campbell wasn't contracted for a third film, and had been very busy with her TV show Party of Five and films like Drowning Mona, so if they wanted her back, they had to work within her schedule, which meant they only had her filming for 3 weeks. This required a massive story overhaul. So writer Aaron Kruger was brought on for scripting duties, with the caveat being that he write it quickly. 6 weeks, in fact. Such an extreme deadline for a film series that is known for its great writing should have been a red flag from the beginning. But the Weinsteins really liked Kruger's tenacity and quick turnaround, and didn't see any issue with the limited time. Craven was even impressed with the pages that he had been receiving from Aaron during this time. By his own admission, Kruger had issues with writing for the characters, often having to revise drafts with Craven or the actors. Unfortunately, once filming started, Kruger was taken off the project by Weinstein in order to work on Reindeer Games. Leda Kalogridis, I really don't even know if I'm saying that name right, was then brought in for any rewrites needed while filming. This is odd because while Leda went on to write films such as Shutter Island and Avatar, she had no experience at the time. But Wes Craven felt that she had an understanding of the first 2 Scream films that would make her perfect for the job. Her main focus was the inclusion of Sidney's mother and bringing the events of the first film back around to this one. And then the events of April 20th, 1999 changed everything. When the Columbine high school shootings happened, society was looking for something to blame. Not wanting to face reality, people came together to blame the media. It was apparently the fault of violent movies and video games. You know, the exact argument that Billy and Stu used in the first film. Absolute nonsense.
Don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
Unfortunately, Miramax caved to the mounting pressure and had many demands for Wes Craven. The first of which being the change in location from Woodsboro to Los Angeles. They felt the move would help get ahead of any criticism of a small town being devastated by tragedy, like in Columbine. And with the plot being based around making a movie, the change to Los Angeles made the most sense. They also didn't want any teenagers involved in the killings, for obvious reasons. The final caveat was a big one though. They wanted Craven to focus on the comedic moments and to lighten up on the bloodshed. Oh boy. While Craven fought back, it clearly wasn't enough, because the film we got had more than its fair share of comedic bits, and the kills are mostly a result of unseen stabs, and then people covered in blood. Even the big house explosion quickly envelops the character in flame, and we don't see any actual gore. When compared to the rather visceral shots from the first 2 films, Scream 3 really disappoints. The biggest change that occurred during production were the number of killers. Both of the prior Scream films had 2 different killers, Billy and Stu in the first, and Mrs. Loomis and Mickey from the second. The third film changed things up, and only Roman was revealed to be the killer. However, that wasn't the original intention, and the evidence is all over the film. Sure, they tease several times that the police detectives are up to no good, even giving Roman a police-issued bulletproof vest, and there have even been theories regarding David Arquette's Dewey. But the main character to look at here is Emily Mortimer's Angelina. She would have been Roman's lover and also a former classmate of Sidney's. Unlike Roman, whose motivation was payback for the childhood taken away from him by Sidney's mother, Angelina's motivations are fame. She idolizes Sidney and knows that playing her will be her ticket to superstardom. But with the prevailing worry about people guessing the ending and wanting to come up with something fresh, they decided to whittle it down to just 1 killer and drop the Angelina-Roman team up. But this change happened fairly late in the process, and its footprints are all over the film. Ghostface is able to be in way too many places at once, and travels massive distances in short amounts of time. Emily is also unaccounted for in many moments where Ghostface is present. So in trying to make the film more unique and distinct from the prior films, they also made it nonsensical, which is very anti-Scream. While we've talked about plenty of the changes with the ending, one of the other main changes would have been the opening. While the released film saw Cotton Weary getting murdered at his home in LA, Williamson's outline had Sidney opening the film with a friend. They would be stalked and nearly killed, only for Sidney to kill Ghostface and reveal that it was simply a fan. This sets up why Sidney is off hiding in the woods. But obviously, given that Neve Campbell was only available for 3 weeks, her scenes were given to others. While most of the casting remained consistent despite script changes, Kate Hudson was announced for a role, speculated to be Sarah Darling, but she dropped out before filming started, likely due to the massive success of a certain other film released at the same time. But with all of these changes, I find the biggest issue with Scream 3 to be with its characters. These don't feel like the people we followed around in the first 2 films. Sure, they may sound like them, but they're missing those key elements that make them more than just Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette. Kruger himself admits to not quite getting the characters as a result of him not being involved from the beginning. An early draft even had Sidney as more of a Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2 kind of character. Thankfully, Wes stepped in and put a kibosh on that. Who knows what we would have gotten otherwise. But as is, there's something that feels quite off about the main trio's interactions. Had we gotten Williamson's version of Scream 3, it seems likely that much of the criticism would be remedied. The new LA location would revert back to the familiar scenery of Woodsboro, and rather than opening with a side character, Cotton Weary, we get Sidney and a logical explanation for why she'd be in the middle of the woods. And while we'd get a mastermind behind it all, the reveal would be someone we care about and know, rather than a brand new character that has all of this expository connection to our lead.
She slammed the door in my face, and she said I was Rena's child and Rena was dead.
Unlike Aaron Kruger, who was desperate to avoid retreading the prior films, Williamson's goal always seemed to be about making logical sense for the story. And without his involvement, we received the messy version that released to theaters on February 4th, 2000. Given all of these inconsistencies and studio demands, it's no surprise that the film received mixed reviews. Fans weren't given the sequel they were promised, and all interest in the Scream franchise seemed to wither up overnight. Thankfully, after years of crappy imitators, Craven and Williamson were able to join forces again for Scream 4. This time, there were no cultural events that caused a massive shift in the story. Thank God. The Scream series hasn't had any trouble staying at the pop culture forefront, with an MTV series releasing in 2015 and airing for 3 seasons. January 14th sees the return of the Scream franchise with Scream. Because naming sequels has apparently just gotten too hard these days. As a huge fan of the franchise, I can't wait to see what they have in store for us. Whether that means a whole new set of films or just a new generation discovering the old ones. One question will always persist.
What's your favorite scary movie?